Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Check out my comics at KingComics.CA. Check out my other videos at KingComics2021, my YouTube channel. Check out my Instagram, MaximusRex13, and check out my Facebook, MaxRex and or Big Baby. So today is Friday, guys. Hope you've got a great weekend planned for yourselves. We are looking at Spawn. It is Tom McFarlane Day, and we're looking at issue number 8, cover dated February 1990. Whoops, I didn't check. So what is it? 1993. So this is a pretty famous issue. Why? Because this is the start of the, hot writers run on Spawn. 4 issues that are written by kind of celebrity writers of the day. So on issue 8, you've got Alan Moore. Next issue, you've got Neil Gaiman. We'll talk more about him in light of recent events next week when we talk about his issue. Number 10 by Dave Sim. And number 11 by Frank Miller. So we're starting with what is probably the best of the bunch, I would say, definitely. Why? Because it's Alan Moore, and Alan Moore just has a knack of, with, storytelling and taking interesting, or maybe not so interesting characters in this case, and making them interesting, or finding interesting things to focus on or pull to the forefront. This issue definitely kind of introduces us to the version of hell in the Spawn universe. At this point, we've seen the Violator and we've seen the Devil. We've seen a little bit of fire, and that's about it. So Alan Moore is going to flesh out kind of his version of hell, which then in turn will become kind of part of the backstory of Spawn, right? That Tom McFarlane is going to extrapolate from, which is a smart move, right? Get the best writer in the world to come up with a bunch of cool concepts in your comic, and then strip mine those for the coming months and possibly years. Just look at DC Comics. They're strip mining, the lowliest and smallest bits of DC stuff that Alan Moore did. Watchmen, for example, is not the lowliest, but like that's the big thing that he did. They're still, doing derivatives, toys and stuff like that, merchandising off of Watchmen, still making tons of money off of that. Recently, Rob Liefeld, I was listening on Robservations where he mentioned that this Green Lantern story, Jeff Johns went to this one short story that he did in this annual and took parts of that and built a whole kind of, crossover event. So even, as recently as the mid 20-aughts or whatever, 2010s, and now they're still strip mining Alan Moore stories. So yeah, it just shows kind of the power of his writing. I'm not sure that it had that much of an effect on Spawn as it did maybe with those other examples I gave you in the DC universe, but definitely going to take the time to have a look at this one and see what's interesting about it. So starting with the cover real quick. So Tom McFarlane started, I don't know if he started this trend. I feel like he did, of these, recreating his own covers and not just homaging covers by other artists from the past and stuff, or covers that he liked. So he did on Spider-Man 1. Then he already kind of referenced himself on Spider-Man 13, if I'm not mistaken, is the right issue, with the black costume. And now he's doing it again with Spawn here. So, back in the day it was kind of unheard of, and Tom McFarlane really kind of popularized the idea, I guess. And it just means that it's less work time for him because he doesn't have to come up with a new design for the cover. So maybe an odd choice to do that on the issue that Alan Moore is writing, because as you'll see, Spawn does not appear in the issue at all. So he is on the cover, I guess, for marketing purposes, but maybe this is somewhere where McFarlane could have made a bit more of an effort to have a cover that ties in to what's going on in the inside. But anyways, not a bad cover per se, maybe just a little bit lazy and obviously quick to do. Anyways, probably light boxed it, right? So Image Comics presents In Heaven, story Alan Moore, art Tom McFarlane, letters and editor Tom Orzechowski, color Steve Oliff and Ruben Rude. So yeah, we get a kind of a Matrixy vibe here, right, from people growing in the pods, where the Matrix is technological. This is clearly kind of a weird organic version of hell, or organic matter that grows in hell. So when, if you remember from issue 5, Billy Kincaid is killed by Spawn, right? So he's kind of getting a little bit of a flashback to this, like what he saw right before he died was Spawn just diving at him. And then, as you saw at the end of issue 5, kind of stabbing him with ice cream scoops and stuff. So kind of Billy Kincaid's last vision on Earth. And now he's like, now I'm growing in some sort of pod all of a sudden, right? I will commend McFarlane on the art in this issue, because it does feel like, wow, Alan Moore's writing something, so he's really putting in the effort, all these details and little skulls, and it does help, I guess, at least for these first few pages where everything's kind of organic. It's a forest, not too much perspective to do, but I feel like he's really putting in the time for the compositions, and not cheaping out on that noodly kind of detaily goodness that we expect from him and we'd like to see. Always funny to see a fat guy naked. I gotta, unfortunately, I'm gonna just say that. Here it's funny, like it's a weird choice where he's covered in goo, and he does that McFarlane silhouette thing where he doesn't define the shapes and stuff. But I mean, I don't know exactly what's going on with this junk there. Maybe he's a hermaphrodite or something, or actually has a vagina, but that looks more like a vagina than a penis to me. So in this case, why not just grab some of this goo and cover the penis and stuff and cover that area? That way you don't have guys like me questioning what's going on with his genitalia. And I do want to mention as well, this is, I'm going to cry. No, I'm kidding. The last issue actually printed on newsprint. So the last issue that to me looks really good. I think on the glossy paper, the Spawn starts to look good again later on when McFarlane just kind of jumps off and Capullo jumps in. Then there seems to be over, a certain number of issues, some kind of color readjustment, where even though it's on glossy paper, we're getting a bit more of this effect. But like, again, the fact that the black with the newsprint gets softened a little bit, I think just does wonders for McFarlane's art and the colors that Steve Oliff applies. That gets kind of lost at first when they switch over to the glossy paper. You'll see once next week I review issue number 9, you'll see the difference right away as far as the coloring goes. There's more subtlety, I think, overall in the tones and stuff here that you lose once you go over to the glossy paper. Just my opinion, but yeah, again, try to pay attention to how this comic looks. And if you have it at home, pull it out, take a look. It's going to look a lot different next issue. So yeah, these depictions of hell are great. Lots of layering and faraway backgrounds back here, which I think are cool. These weird little McFarlane creatures he kind of throws in there. So, Kincaid meets these other, denizens of hell who've just grown out of these pods as well, right? So they obviously get together. I mean, they don't know they're in hell, right? That's basically what's kind of implied at first, is they don't really have an idea of where they are. They're not quite sure. First time I've seen McFarlane indicate nipples. Maybe he's getting inspiration from Eric Larson, because there's similar kind of rendering to it. I know that's pretty specific information about nipples, but what are you going to do? So you got the kid here who just keeps repeating stuff like she knows what's going on, right? So, there's 10 deadlands, like spheres, one inside another. So she's kind of the exposition girl, right? She's kind of telling us everything. This is just the lowest sphere, the reception area. If you want to go higher, you'll have to climb the tower, right? And then there's some interesting bits where everyone kind of sees God, or what they think is God, right? Or something like that, or someone they know. Oh, Lord, look at this, everybody. He's come for me. I knew he would. I went in for my gallbladder operation, and I woke up growing in that orchard, but I knew he wouldn't forget me. So she's thinking of the Lord, right? Comfort of joy, sweet and low, bright and beautiful. Who amongst you singeth these songs? I do, Lord. Why, I sing them all the time. Bright, beautiful. Listen, I'll sing one for you now if you'll just take me up. Oh, I look across the Jordan, what do I see? Coming for to carry me more. Anyways, I invented that melody. I'm not sure if that's what it is, but it works. Hey, that ain't no angel. It's got a, motor in the back. And of course, exposition girl. It was a soul trapper from the 6th sphere. They keep their souls as pets there. It's a fashion thing. This year, it's singers. Last year, it was acrobats. That's kind of an interesting concept, right? So I think about the kid as we camp down for the night. So she's a little autistic, whatever, disturbed. That's natural. So he just chalks it up to her being autistic. Being dead, it's a disturbing thing. So we just keep moving along. We see this is a pretty cool kind of montage. I guess I lied in saying we don't see Spawn in this issue. We do, but it's just kind of Billy Kincaid remembering Spawn. But I do like the way this whole page is designed. Very cool. Get a shot of Spawn here, another spot. And you get three shots of Spawn here, kind of wrapped up in Billy Kincaid's arm. Spawn's, around Billy Kincaid, his chains around his neck. you know, using the chains as a design element all throughout, the bats and everything, the Spawn logo. Just a very cool looking page. Great kind of, that would be a great poster, right? So as they move along, everyone just kind of gets picked off by whatever kind of gods and deities are wanting them or something. So we ain't set out 5 minutes when a ray from the sky disintegrates Larry, the restaurant owner, and drug deal fatality from Michigan. I mean, that's gotta hurt, right? So the exposition girl. You don't see many of those. That was the prime monad from the highest sphere, the 10th. He handpicked souls to use as circuitry in his macro computer. Your friend's lucky. These were all concepts that, you know, only could come from Alan Moore, I think, or very few writers anyways. I don't think Tom McFarlane can come up with this stuff because I don't think Tom McFarlane reads. From what I've heard, he reads the sports page and that's about it, right? That's kind of the urban legend about Tom McFarlane. Not that I'm shitting on him. You read what you're into, books, sports, you know, comic books, as long as you're reading something, I think. But, you know, I'm sure Alan Moore is a bit more of a deeper reader and, you know, is reading science magazines or is into kind of the esoteric and technology and stuff. So he's probably well aware, even back then in the 90s, about macro computers, which are now quantum computers, I guess, is now the next step or the new term for it. I'm not well versed in all that stuff, but from what I hear, that's like the latest, you know, version of a computer, quantum computing computers. Anyways, it was just kind of weird. I was reading this article about it that said that like quantum computers are now finding information in parallel universes. So are they literally going to parallel universes for that information, or are they extrapolating parallel universes and parallel things happening to calculate and make the best decision? It's a very odd thing. It's hard to wrap your head around it. But anyways, anyone who's out there and maybe has answers for me, let me know in the comments how that works. All right. So Bob gets picked off here by some sort of Elvis squid, which is kind of interesting. I have to assume that that was in the script, right, by Alan Moore. I have to assume that Alan Moore, as usual, gave Tom McFarlane the script where he gives lots of detail and says, you know, but you're free to do what you want. So I'd love to see that script eventually, to see how closely McFarlane actually came to, you know, what Alan Moore put down on the page. As we know from working with like Dave Gibbons, we have a lot of information on the script and the pages, and I mean Dave Gibbons was pretty thorough in including basically every detail that Alan Moore threw down in the description. So yeah, he gets taken away, and Exposition Girl says there's nothing you can do for him. That's a Thugan Metabuse from the fifth sphere. I may be saying that all right. They get an addictive drug rush from the souls of people like Bob. Okay, so they take people as drugs. The Ditzy Blonde gets taken away by a spider. Once again, Exposition Girl. The kid tells me it was a soul gourmet from the third sphere. Whatever that means. Again, another just kind of throwaway interesting concept that Alan Moore puts down on the page, and you could extrapolate tons of crazy stuff from. In that way, I do find there's a similarity, even though Alan Moore's only a writer, and for example, Jack Kirby is a writer-artist. There are similarities in both of their writing where, you know, concepts are just thrown out really quickly on a page and kind of forgotten about and moved on from. And just from that concept, you could extrapolate so much stuff. I mean, again, DC did it to Alan Moore, and I do feel like Marvel did it to Kirby once he left. So they kept strip mining just those basic stories. I forget where it was pointed out. I wish I could credit whoever wrote this or whatever, but it was said that, you know, when Jack Kirby was writing the Fantastic Four, they started out, you know, as a family. Reed got married. Johnny went through college, eventually graduated. You know, eventually they had a kid. Eventually they had kids. They started growing up, and you know, there was an evolution. Even though it was a serial comic printed every month, there was an evolution, right, of the characters. Steve Ditko, when he started on Spider-Man, Peter Parker was like a lowly, nerdy high school kid. Well, eventually he graduated and he started going to college and he started working for the Daily Bugle and the newspaper, and there was an evolution. And it seems like once Steve Ditko leaves and once Jack Kirby leaves, those characters are just kind of frozen in that mode, and they just keep strip mining what's already been done instead of kind of pushing them forward and past that moment in time, right? It's an interesting concept. I kind of see it and understand it. And of course, creatively, it's always it's always easier to just strip mine ideas that have already been around than to try to come up with new things or new twists on old ideas, right? Jack Kirby and Alan Moore are always, I feel, no matter what they're doing, trying to find a new twist on an old idea or trying to create a completely new idea if that's possible. Once more, we've got Kincaid's Bad Dreams of Spawn. Another greatly designed page here. Spawn starts to get more and more exaggerated in his look. Like, it's almost here like he's got like somewhat Violator-ish proportions in his arms. And I like that. I think it's a good vehicle, dreamscapes and stuff for this kind of artwork, and Todd McFarlane really takes advantage of it. So Kincaid has had enough, right? I wake up in a cold sweat and I know what's got to be done. The kid's sleeping by the campfire. It's the only way. Get it out of my system. Stop the dream. So he feels like, you know, he's a child killer. So he feels like by killing this child, it's probably going to help him. Look at her. Always gets me how they look when they're asleep. Little Jessica, little angel. She ain't going to know a thing about it. And then he does, you know, start squeezing her neck, but we don't get exactly the reaction we wanted. We get a smile, some big bright-eyed, you know, open eyes. The face starts cracking, and the voice changes, right? Now, how do we know that? Well, from the coloring, right, which indicates it to us, and it's slowly changing into this. So the change becomes obvious, right? So I guess her voice is probably childlike, and here it's probably changing just a little bit, and then it becomes fully this guy's voice, who we're going to find out who that is on the next page. I'll just get to it. Well, it's about time. I wondered how long it'd be before you croaked, the know-it-all little bitch. Glad to see you still got what it takes, Chili. You know, for a while there, we was scared you were going to wuss out on us. And with that, Alan Moore basically establishes that Violator is not like a lone character, that he's actually got a few brothers, right? Or in this case, he's got one brother, and later on he's going to, in the Violator miniseries, establish all his other brothers, the Fleabiac brothers, right? So we see him, but I mean, he is, I'll just read it. Great disguise, huh? I mean, flimsy but cute as hell. I'm the Vindicator, one of the 5 famous Fleabiac brothers. I guess you probably heard of us. So, again, establishing the brothers. We don't see the other ones, but that there's 5 of them, right? Interesting. Alan Moore, once again, throwing in just a quick, cool concept that's going to be extrapolated upon by himself for a little bit and by others later on the Spawn series, right? So it's going to... This issue, again, of Spawn is going to fuel so many Spawn storylines by Todd McFarlane in the future. Sorry about entrapping you like that. I just had to make sure you was the kind of guy we want up on the 8th sphere. So they're kind of recruiting from the 8th sphere. We've seen a few of the other spheres. This, just the skin of the young girl there, that's kind of gross and disheartening graphically. Spawn poster by Frank Miller. Even as a kid, I got to admit, I was expecting a little bit more. I don't know if I like Frank Miller's version of Spawn that much. Not that it's a bad image per se, if this was just some naked guy who got burned and is wrapped in like a blanket or something. But it's definitely, you know, 100% Sin City style. Spawn done Sin City style. Just not my favorite Frank Miller representation. I feel like he just didn't want to draw the complicated bits. He's like, flip through the Spawn. He's like, I don't want to draw the mask. I don't want to draw the chains, the spikes, all that stuff. He's like, McFarlane does cover him up a lot with the with a cape, so I'll just do him with no you know, no mask on and cape, right? Because I could see Miller being much more interested in Spawn's actual burnt to a crisp face and his style and stuff than the Spawn mask. Although it does, you know, black and white wise, contrast wise with his style, it does invite some interesting design, even from Frank Miller, with Spawn having his mask on. Don't know if we've ever seen that. I'd have to see if are there other images of Spawn by Frank Miller? Let me know in the comments. Next issue poster by Jim Lee. Does this ever actually happen? I guess we're going to find out next week, right, for the review of issue 9. But for some reason, I feel like we get something else, like this fell through or it didn't work out. Or at least that's kind of my memory of it from being a kid. Again, I'll be looking at the comic before a review, so next week I'll be able to speak on that. Obviously, smart to remind us, Dave Sim writes Spawn number 10, and I guess because of the poster here, we're getting a, I don't think that's a double-page spread, right? So we got, yeah, exactly. So we've got the splash here, right? This is interrupted. We throw in an ad because generally there are no ads in the Spawn stories or most Image comics. But again, because of the way the pages worked out, they had to throw that in there. So everything made sense. Some more great visuals. Like, I'd like to read again Alan Moore's description of the Tower of Hell, but I mean, McFarlane's done a pretty cool job there. Love the kind of moody sky and background and the perspective that it kind of creates. Very kind of He-Man and Castle Grayskull-y, so I'm going to like that for sure. And basically the Vindicator running after Billy Kincaid through the levels of hell. I mean, that must have been a bitch to draw. I think it's pretty well done. And we're presented with all the levels of hell here, so I'll just read some of this description, because again, it's Alan Moore at his best. So real quick in describing each level here. So we're already on level 1, right? So now, you want to be a fur coat for some hyper-intelligent ice shrimp on the second sphere? I mean, just say, I can drop you right off. So just that description again, what a concept, right? You can just go really far with just that. Or what about the third sphere? Honest, I'd understand. Getting filleted and served with a light pastry is what some guys like. I know that. But you see, you're special. You're a dead child murderer, and we appreciate that in a guy. I mean, here on the fourth, you'd be a fuel rod. You know, like, it leaves a lot to your imagination, but man, just what's suggested. I seen you in action, Mr. Chili, and I gotta say you're too good for that. I don't know why he calls him Mr. Chili. Oh, is it because of the ice cream truck? Makes sense. Is that what he was calling himself, maybe? I don't think that was mentioned in issue 5. That, again, feels like an Alan Moore thing. No way are you going to end up as nose candy for some fifth sphere hippie meta squid. So that's what we saw earlier, right? The Elvis. Or singing gospel favorites in an electrified birdcage here on the 6th. Culture ain't for us. We're more strangle them and stick them in the freezer kind of guys. As for the 7th sphere, don't ask. It's the place called Erebus, but nobody's ever seen inside. We figure it's some special hell for the most damnable creatures of all. This is a bit, again, Alan Moore, just so clever, and he knows what's coming with the Dave Sim issue. So this is basically a worked in reference to issue 10, where Spawn will go to the Cerebrus world, and here he just calls it Erebus, right? But clearly a reference to Cerebus or Cerebus, or however you're supposed to pronounce this. Again, you know how I am with pronunciations. So is it Cerebus or Cerebus? Let me know in the comments if you know. Now this place you're going to like. Some call it the 8th sphere, some call it the Malbolge. But me, I call it home. It's weird, Because Malabolgia or just Malbolge, if I was to kind of, do some Franglish, which is when you mix French and English, it's either the male bulge, right? In English, or Malbolge. So like my bulge hurts, my balls hurt. Anyways, I don't know if that's interesting to anyone, but it's interesting to me. And what's going on the 8th level, where that's a level where, you get gifted basically a Spawn costume. And of course, Kincaid is basically, it's his worst nightmare because he's being wrapped in and of the very thing that killed him, right? But, again, as I said, just a bit of foreshadowing. I know that Billy Kincaid will come back later on in Spawn, much later on, actually, in issues where I hadn't actually read when I was a kid, but I found out later. So when I get there with the Spawn reviews at that point, I think it's definitely Greg Capullo drawing it. So once I start my Greg Capullo reviews, we'll be getting to that at some point. I'll be reviewing that as well. But again, some cool visuals, another cool splash page, kind of very designy, right? Even though this is not a dream sequence, but almost kind of recreating that dream sequence in the reality of Billy Kincaid in this moment in hell, right? So it's like his dreams, his nightmares have become a reality here. And I hadn't noticed before, but there's like a weird face here around Billy Kincaid. I don't know, that's an odd choice maybe. Never saw that before. So yeah, the Spawn costume, as we know by now, that's kind of like a, for lack of a better term, a symbiote or a parasite, kind of like Venom, right? I wonder, where that idea came from. It was already kind of talked about or hinted about, so I wonder if Alan Moore suggested this to Todd McFarlane, and that's why he hinted at it in a couple of past issues where the cape kind of floats off during the overkill storyline. Or if Todd McFarlane came up with that himself, I'm not quite sure. I still feel like Alan Moore came up with it, and having told McFarlane about it, McFarlane threw it in there just, just to start off the mystery of the costume and what's going on. And then it's kind of revealed here that it is that. Spawn himself, by this point, doesn't know that his costume's alive yet, right? He's going to find out later. So yeah, Billy Kincaid just basically finds out that, hell's all about souls and collecting souls, and he's going to be one of those collectors for the Malabolgia, right? For the hurt bulge. And the line at the end, caca happens, little buddy. Caca happens. Is kind of very 90s, but there you go. And caca is shit, right? So that's a French word for shit, in case you didn't know. Next issue, Neil Gaiman, and lots of baggage that we may or may not talk about. I'll probably talk a little bit about it. Some weird stuff next week. Frank Miller writes Spawn 11, so poster insert by GF Darrow. We definitely get that one. We'll talk about it when we get there. Great image. Kind of burned into my head. So yeah, he's very smart in his advertising right away, reminding you about everyone who's coming in to write. First chance he gets, right? And there you go. I'm working on something. You remember these classic videos, right? If you don't, you can check them out on YouTube. I'll be doing starting some reviews of those with my buddy Nick, if everything goes well, pretty soon. I'll be posting those as well. Slowly but surely, we're going to work our way into some video reviews and movie reviews on the channel as well. And this is definitely some of the first kind of comic book related videos I'd like to review. And really, it'd be more of a commentary thing. We'd be watching the thing and commenting throughout. At least that's the idea. We'll see if we get there. Used to love these old ads here selling all these comics. I'd kind of just read through it and, you know, there's no internet back then. So this was your only source of like, hey, what's come out recently? That was basically the idea with this page here. And what can I order? And then there's some older stuff too. On maybe not, this seems to be more recent stuff, but I remember like Dark Knight Returns, the trade paperback from way back in the day I ordered when I was 13, was from one of these ads here. I waited forever. Finally came though. It's a great read. So image this, the mightiest heroes of all time. Alan Moore, Steve Bissette, Rick Veitch, Dave Gibbons, John Totalman, Don Simpson, Jim Valentino. 1963, which was never finished and the annual never came out. But if you're interested, I am one of the lowly participants in a kind of jam project you can look at on Facebook. If you look up the Cartoonist Kayfabe Ringside Seats group, which is CKRS for short, if you want to look for it. I've actually joined up with a bunch of guys there to actually get that annual finished. It's kind of a jam piece with a bunch of different artists working on it. I've only done a few kind of illustrations for a prose story in the book, but that is coming out pretty damn soon. I know I've seen proofs of it posted on Facebook. So if you're interested in that, maybe you're a fan of the original 1963 series, you collected it, I have all the issues, and you never got the kind of resolution that you wanted once you saw Shaft at the end of that last issue they did. Well, here's your chance. Pick up the 1963 annual. I don't want to call it a reboot, but again, it's finally here. Check it out. Look on CKRS. Look it up on the internet, and you shouldn't have any trouble finding it. There you go. Spawn Heads. Get the limited edition Max card free with this ludicrously lowball subscription offer. I remember this card. This was like the special edition. You can get the actual one in the Wizard issue when this came out, I think. But then you can order for some, you know, super colored platinum edition, whatever. Anyways, there you go, guys. That is my review of Spawn number 8 by Todd McFarlane, but also written by Alan Moore. If you are still watching and subscribed to the channel, thank you so much for your loyalty. I really do appreciate it. If you are watching but you're not subscribed, please do so below. It only takes a quick second for you, and it really helps the channel out. It helps get us out there to other people who are into the same stuff that we are, basically comic books. So thank you so much for viewing. Have a great weekend and have an awesome night.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.